Really mean it. All right, let's get to our next guest here. And I want to play a trailer here. So I got to do this. All right, watch this.
I feel bad because I brought you to a place that I feel comfortable with on our first date.
First dates are always weird.
My pet's just sweat when I'm nervous.
Do my hands.
Oh, your hands are sweaty. Do you want to stay over or?
I got my dogs out.
Ooh, let your dogs out.
Do you want me to bark?
No. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sid, Tom's brother. You can yell at him all you want, much like his wife Janet does.
He pushes my buttons.
I idolized him.
When you say it like that, it makes me feel bad for him.
You are the coach here. The Penn reunion, isn't that cool?
All of our coordinating will be done on Facebook. You need to get on social media pronto.
The whole world is online.
Tell me about it. I even got my law degree online.
Did I ever tell you that I was friends with someone famous in college?
She's a pitch perfect actress.
You were friends with Elizabeth Banks?
Yes!
And she knows who you are?
Yeah. I mean, I think she does. Dear Elizabeth, I just remembered something you used to do in college. You would wave and you would say, "Eat Wheaties!" Dear Elizabeth, random, but do you remember I was in that comedy improv troupe, Booty and the Whole Fish? Do you remember we took Eat Wheaties? Eat Wheaties. Eat Wheaties.
Who's Sid Straw?
He says he's a close acquaintance of Elizabeth Banks.
There is no such thing.
He's writing crazy posts on Elizabeth Banks' fan page.
They went viral. What does that mean?
It means a lot of people saw it.
You have been fired from your job, removed from a volunteer position, and publicly mocked for your celebrity obsession.
He also just moved in with his parents.
I don't know if that was necessary. No. Stop trying so hard with everything.
This is not about Elizabeth Banks. This is about me, confident about who I am and what I've become.
I like your optimism.
You gave a wedgie to Sharon Stone?
It's my claim to fame.
Do you keep in touch with her and stuff?
No, she's Sharon Stone.
That movie looks fantastic. And at the end, you see also starring. And a movie like that, I think, is so successful because of the side players, the side characters. Tony Hale is amazing, but the support that he gets from that cast is fantastic. Let's bring in the writer and director of that movie. And because I don't want to screw up your last name, I'm going to say, Scott, you tell me how to pronounce your last name.
It's pronounced Abramovitch.
Abramovitch. I was going to say that. Okay. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks, and nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So my friend Tim said, "Hey, have you seen the trailer for Eat Wheaties this morning?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't seen it." So I looked it up right away as we were talking and watched it. Fell in love, automatically. I love Tony Hale, and I was just talking about the cast, the also starring cast. Amazing supporting cast in this movie.
Yeah, it's as a first time. It's not a first time filmmaker, but it's the first time I'm directing, and to have this kind of cast, it's like you dream of this.
So, how did this cast come about? We'll talk about Tony later, but I really want to talk about some of these side characters because every time I watch a movie, I'm usually entertained by the guy who was just there for 10 or 15 minutes. Somebody I recognize from TV or the movies that I love. Ravi Patel is one of those guys that pops up here and there. Like, oh my God, this movie is just awesome because Ravi's in it. How do you get these people? Is it the casting? Is it your genius?
Well, that's a good question.
Go ahead. And
we did have a great casting director, Lisa London, and she's got a partner, Catherine, who, they were definitely the facilitators. I think, casting is a weird thing. I mean, it happened on my first film in a similar way. When you get somebody in the lead that everyone else wants to work with, it suddenly opens up the possibilities of who the rest of your cast can be. So, you start with the lead, and when you start with Tony Hale, I think you're in a sweet spot where everyone you go to is going to be excited to work with them. So that was, I think the first step was, getting Tony to say yes. So even though we're not talking about Tony, I think it all kind of comes back to Tony in a certain way. I was very,
I suppose if you put a movie together with Gary Busey, he's a nice guy, but he's absolutely crazy. You might not have people coming out of the woodwork that wants to work with Gary Busey, but Tony Hale, on the other hand.
Yeah, it's Gary Busey. I kind of worked with him once, not directly, but I worked on a project that he was involved with called Prayer Hour, which was a lot of fun. And he, I heard stories from the days that he was on. It's about a televangelist who, who's not quite the most honest guy, and when he taped with Gary Busey. He's kind of like, he's in character. It's kind of like Borat, and Gary Busey just goes off, and the interview is brilliant. But even afterwards, Don, who plays Pastor Shepard, he just wasn't sure, was this real, or was he really angry? And I don't know if you ever know with Gary Busey.
Right.
Tony,
Tell me about Tony Hale then. Tell me about working with Tony Hale. We see him as, from Arrested Development. We know that character, and Veep, of course. And he plays a certain character from time to time, although I've seen him take a turn to the dark side in a few projects. But I think we know Tony is being sweet. Actually, he's just the character of Sid String, right? Strong, yes. Sid Strong in this movie. Talk about Tony, working with him, his personality, his acceptance of this movie, and what he got out of this. Some actors, I think, take the job because it's a paycheck. I want to know if that was Tony's case, or if this was something he really gained something from.
I think from Tony's perspective, and I hate to speak for Tony, but I from my perception of Tony's what he felt when he read the script was that I think he saw a role that combines, I think, the thing that everyone knows him for, which is being kind of quirky and different and interesting, but at the same time, being at the center in a way that character gets to kind of be honest and genuine and grounded in ways that, not to say that Buster and from Arrested Development and Gary from Veep aren't grounded, but they're certainly less grounded, I think, than the people at the center of it. Particularly on Veep, where Julie Louis-Dreyfus, I think, gets to kind of play a more well, actually, I shouldn't say that, because she's not quite three-dimensional, but I think that with this character, with Sid Straw, it was something that allowed Tony to flex a muscle that he's flexed before in plenty of movies and TV shows, but I think he got to flex all of his muscles at the same time, which is exciting and scary. I'm sure, where, he's in pretty much every scene in the movie. I think there's like 3 or 4 scenes that he's not in. And I also think, the whole process of casting, and we can get back to the supporting roles, he was really collaborative from a standpoint of getting the script as strong as it could be, but also was really invested in helping find, the right people to put around him. So he gave his input on most of the roles that we cast. The thing that I was looking for this movie, was that I love when a movie has actors the same way you were describing, where you see somebody and you know that even in a minute or 2 minutes of screen time, that they bring so much more to it than that. And so I literally picked and chose my favorite people in some of my favorite projects, and had them, had Lisa go out to them, and I mean, literally, the only role that we didn't get our first choice of the main supporting roles was actually the role that I think is the best cast in the film, which is Paul Walter Hauser, who I never thought he would say yes, frankly. I mean, it was one of those things where we had an actor who we loved, and he said yes, but we just could never figure out the schedule, because he was out doing stand-up dates on the weekends, and that was the locations that we had for that character we needed to use them on the weekend. So we just couldn't. We tried to make it work, and we waited up until the last minute, which was literally the movie started shooting, and we're like, okay, he's not coming. And so I said, well, wouldn't it be great if we could get Paul Walter Hauser for this? And I didn't have too high of expectation, but we did. And Paul was in Michigan, and he flew himself back to LA on his own dime, and came in while we're shooting, and just, you know, from the second he stepped onto the set, he created an energy that was just so incredible. Not that Tony doesn't have that energy, but Tony. Sure. Yeah, Tony, you know, was not as much of a live wire. Paul is like, everybody's just, you know, waiting to laugh at every take. You're just kind of like holding it in. You're holding it in because that character, I think, was also allowing itself for that. Every moment he's on screen, I think, is full of energy. Where, you know, Tony had this range of up and down, sort of a roller coaster emotional character arc. Paul is funny, I think, in every scene that you see him. So.
Paul did a great job with the Richard Jewell movie, with Clint Eastwood's movie there, and then he was Stingray in Cobra Kai, which was a total turn. But I think he's really an up and coming actor, somebody that we should really watch out for. And I mean, based on the trailer there, he sounds fantastic in this film. So I made a list. I started making a short list of everyone that's in this movie based on the trailer again, because that's all I've seen so far. Movie comes out at the end of the month, right?
Yeah, April 30th.
Okay, so I started making a list, and then it just kept going on and on and on. Seriously, some of my favorite TV and movie actors, Alan Tudyk. And just give me a few words about all these people. Alan Tudyk.
Well, Alan Tudyk was the funniest performer in the, you know, he was only there for a few days, but in those scenes, you know, he was the guy who went off script in the best way possible. I mean, we really didn't have much time to shoot this movie. So when, you know, we didn't really have time for much improvisation, but man, everything that came out of his mouth was hysterical. So every time you see him on screen, and I'm a huge fan of Firefly. Oh, yeah. And you see the voice work that he does also, you know, beyond
Rogue One. My God, he's so good in Rogue One.
Oh yeah, and so you see, you know, that there's a comedic genius there, and he's got his own show now, which is great too.
Oh my God, Resident Alien.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's perfect. It's a perfect vehicle for his talents.
Yes, Alicia Cuthbert.
She was the second person we cast. You know, the challenge of telling the story, I think, from a casting perspective, is that, you know, the Sid Straw as a main character is, I think, unique. I mean, typically you see characters like Sid in films, but they're typically the strange friend or the strange brother, and they're there for comedic relief. So here we're building a movie around that guy who's kind of his own worst enemy, but, you know, just because he can't connect with other people. So his brother, who's played by David Walton, and sister-in-law, who's played by Alicia, you know, they were really important. I wanted to cast people who normally you'd imagine as being the leads of let's say this was a studio romantic comedy. You know, Alicia and Dave Walton, you felt we needed to feel like they would be the typical centers of it. So getting her to say yes was just, you know, amazing. And she plays sort of the foil. It's not really present in the trailer as much, but, you know, Sid is a guy who the only person he really connects with is his brother, but his brother's wife, played by Alicia, just can't stand him. So, you know, her role was the most challenging, I think, from a tone perspective, to make sure that we get it right. And she was fantastic.
David Walton was on my list as well.
Yeah.
Happy Endings is one of my favorite TV shows. And David Walton pops up on all of those TV shows, New Girl, and another one of my favorites. And speaking of New Girl, Lamorne Morris, you had who played Winston on New Girl, one of my favorite characters of all time.
Yeah, Lamorne was so gracious to do this film. You know, he only also was there for a couple of days, and it's funny, he doesn't even speak in the trailer. You know, that was the rule that in editing there were actually two. There's an actor, I don't know if you watched Orphan Black, but his name's Christian Brune, who plays one of the husbands on Orphan Black. He's also in Ready or Not. He's brilliant also. But Christian and Lamorne had a subplot in the film that got just cut down just because of tone, which was, you know, the tone of this movie was so important to find the center of, you know, this guy who you clearly see is making other people uncomfortable, and just they're not getting him. And those were two of the characters that worked with him that just didn't get him. But we realized that too much of that was too much. So Lamorne's still in the movie. I mean, Lamorne's still in the movie. Christian has been pretty much cut out. But Lamorne was, the comedy that those guys, David Walton too. I mean, the comedy experience that these guys had, it just made my job so much easier. In the limited time we had, knowing that these guys would just, they were pros. They don't miss.
I'm gonna narrow down my list. I have at least 12 or 15 people on this list. It's basically your whole cast. I was just watching Big Sky. I just binged that with my wife. So you had Kylie Bunbury from Big Sky in the movie as well.
Kylie was exceptional. Also, a small role. She plays opposite Robbie Amell, who I don't know if he's on your list. He's actually not.
He is, yeah.
He's not even in the trailer, which is like, that's how deep this cast goes. It's like these amazing people. His show Upload is fantastic, and he's just amazing. My favorite moment in the movie is a Robbie Amell throwaway line. It was a throwaway line that he gets so. It makes me laugh every time I see it. By
the way, Scott, that's what I love about these types of movies, is that you can find somebody like Robbie Amell who's going to make that one line stick in everyone's minds throughout, like an hour and a half movie, and you remember Robbie Amell, who has a small part, but that line was amazing. Absolutely. And Kylie too, Kylie's scenes are a little bit more tension built than some of the other people who got to kind of, like Lamorne got to come in and play with the fun parts of the story, and Alan Tudyk especially was like that. Kylie had a more dramatic-ish, tension-ish kind of feel to her scenes. So she didn't get to do as much of the of some of the fun moments in her time, but she's exceptional. She was in that show Pitch, which I absolutely loved. Yeah. And knowing to get her to say yes to this role was like, not just for me, for my kids. They were playing in a softball league, and when Pitch came out, she was the grand marshal of their parade. Wow! We got to meet her actually, when this is when Pitch was on the air. Yeah, and so getting her into the film, I think was so exciting for them as well. I mean, just a legend, Mimi Kennedy. Oh, she's fantastic as well. So Mimi and Phil, those were, I gotta give Tony Hill credit for both of those. He had worked with Mimi and with Phil Reeves, who plays the dad. She was so great. She's so great. And there's one scene where it's sad because it got trimmed down so drastically in editing, but she's making a breakfast lasagna, which was, something that was in the book that it was actually it was in the book. It was like a throwaway thing. I loved it. And just watching her, we're watching Sid kind of do this post, and she's in the background baking, and she does not ever take a second off, even if the camera's not focused on her. She was amazing. I think it's all gone from the final cut, but I enjoy it. When you watch a movie so many times in editing, sometimes the things that you kind of are drawn to are the little things like that, where it's not even the center of the story or the center of what you're watching. But yeah, Mimi is a pro's pro. I think on the oh my, that's funny. My buddy just said this as I was thinking it. It needs to be on the director's cut. I think her baking. It's funny. The first cut of this movie. So this is based on a book called the Locklear Letters, written by Michael Kuhn, who's a brilliant writer. And I got to know him over the time of development. And throughout shooting, he was on set a lot. It's funny how I showed him the first cut of the movie, which was probably 25 minutes longer, and he loved it. He's like, "Don't change a thing." And it's like, as much as I would love that longer version of the movie, I think there's people who would really love it, and I think that's where Lamorne's character and Christian Brune's character get a lot more. Yeah, they'd love it, of course. It's so editing and knowing that this film is going to live in one version, and you have to make the version that you think is going to be most
accessible to the most number of people, and that's, I think, the challenge. I'd love to be able to do that longer cut that I think has a lot of things that we love. It's going to be released with some deleted scenes, a couple of things on iTunes, I think, and then DVD. So there's some stuff that'll be out there even in this version.
Rizwan Manji, I don't know if I pronounced that right, but Schitt's Creek, and we've seen him in so many things. And again, going back to this whole cast, these are people you will see pop up on various TV shows that steal scenes. You have scene stealers in this movie. Rizwan is awesome. Amazing.
He sure is. I've had the pleasure. The first movie that I wrote and produced, well, it wasn't the first movie I wrote, but it's the first movie that I would talk about, right?
Yeah. Probably a lot of movies you wrote until you got the
it was one that I co-wrote that was made a Lifetime-ish kind of movie. That actually, it's actually pretty good for those kinds of movies. But the first movie that I developed as it was a book that I optioned with my producing partner at the time, Lonnie Dabrowski. And Rizwan was a guy who I met through a fellow writer that I just knew from the coffee places, and we were shooting in Canada, and I knew Riz was Canadian. So I had him kind of audition for this role. It didn't work out. His dates didn't work out. But I met him after we shot the movie, and we clicked right away and have worked together on a couple of things. A pilot that we did at CBC that we co-wrote together. And so when this came around, I wasn't sure what role I wanted him in. We did a couple table reads, and he read a couple different things. And he plays Sid's boss, and he's again, same thing where there's a scene in there that certainly makes me and anyone who knows me laugh. I don't know if there's an inside joke in the film that is connected with Riz and my mom. So, most people won't get it. I think the joke still works for anyone who doesn't get it, but certainly
it's an Easter egg for you. I love that.
It's sure it is. And anytime I screen the film with someone I know, that's the loudest laugh of the movie for sure. And Riz is just, I can reveal what it is. It's something that important, but the character Riz plays has an older wife, and we were going to Photoshop something of photos, but my mom was there, and so we Riz and my mom did a little photo shoot.
That's great.
And Riz also, is one of those guys. When you watch him on Schitt's Creek, I think you see that he's kind of. I feel like he's sort of in that same boat Tony is. Like, I want to make something, and we're gonna figure out the project. That show would have been a great vehicle, but a vehicle for Rizwan to be at the center of something where he's going to flex all the muscles, because he flexes, dramatic muscles. He was in a movie called Patterson with Adam Driver, which is fantastic. A Jim Jarmusch film, and then he's doing Schitt's Creek, and he's popping up in Alexander and the Horrible. Whatever day that is,
Horrible day,
stealing scenes there. So he's capable of doing all these things, and so be able to get that to work with him to do everything is one of my ambitions for the next this next coming year.
So that inspires you, having a cast like this. You work with certain people, and it inspires you to maybe think of other projects on the set. Like, you would be great in something like this. Let's start working on it.
Absolutely, and it's funny because it's mostly the people who were the smaller the role they were in Wheaties, the more I want to find something bigger for them. I know the gratitude I have for Sarah Goldberg is one of them. Hayden Sito, I don't know if they're on your list, but both of them, I've been digging to find stuff to work with together. Hayden and I are already kind of involved with a project now, and Sarah and I are hoping to get something going this year too. So yeah, absolutely. Getting the beauty about doing a film like this is that with a cast like this is that, you get to meet these people who you love. Yeah. And as a writer and director, to be able to work with these people again is a luxury I hope I get to have.
So the book, as you mentioned, is called The Locklear Letters. I got to imagine that the whole premise of this started 20 years ago, maybe?
Something like that, yeah. And it's funny because it's been re-released, and now the new title of the book is Eat Wheaties. Actually, they're back here. They're my backdrop. I don't know if you can see.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
that's the original cover is Locklear Letters, and now it's called Eat Wheaties.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It's
Heather Locklear was, huge 20, 30 years ago. Elizabeth Banks is the center of this movie, where the main character, Tony Hale's character, thinks that he knew her and she knew him. So he goes on social media and starts talking to her, doesn't realize that it is, everybody sees it, it's public, and he becomes the center of attention. And that's where the trailer kind of leaves off. We don't know what's going to happen after that. We don't know how it ends. Fantastic. But where did it get to a point where it became Elizabeth Banks with being Heather Locklear first? Where did you get to Elizabeth Banks? Because she's another actor I love.
Yeah, for sure. Elizabeth Banks was, the perfect choice for this sort of updated version of what I think works so well with Heather Locklear in the book. So when I first read the book, I loved it. I love the character of Sid Straw. It's an epistolary novel. It's all told through letters from Sid Straw's desk, or he's writing flower notes, or he's, sending a message to his mom or something, or stationery at the office. Heather Locklear didn't make sense for me. I mean, to be honest, when I read the book the first time, I loved it. I just didn't see it as a movie. And I think when I reread it a couple of years ago, Michael wrote a sequel called Everybody Says Hello. And I read it again, and I realized how in the 12 or 15 years, whatever it was in between when the book first came out and to when I read it the next time, the world has changed, and the world of celebrity had changed, and the world of communication and connection had changed. And so two things, made me feel like this was more of a film. First was this idea of how we now feel anyone feels closer to celebrities, that they're so accessible that we can, tweet at them or friend them or follow them at the very least and really be a part of their lives. The second thing was this idea that you could say or do something on social media that you think is funny or you think is interesting or you think is relevant, and other people decide that you're not funny. Or
I go through that all the time. It drives me nuts.
I know. So both of these things kind of came together and made me feel like, oh, there's a movie here now. And so when I was thinking, well, who's the celebrity that worked? I wanted somebody who really went to college. Excuse me. And I think that list was not that long to begin with, of actresses who were in that right range who went to college. And then I also
did she really go to Penn State?
She did, University of Pennsylvania, yeah. And the other thing I wanted was for it to be someone that you would imagine could be friends with a guy like Sid, when they were in college at that age. And Elizabeth Banks has this accessible feeling that she's so bright and friendly that you imagine that she could have been friends with a guy like Sid, who might have been a little socially awkward, or at least trying to be funny. And so getting her to give us permission to use her in the film the way that she's used, and getting University of Pennsylvania's blessing. They sent us all kinds of swag, and getting General Mills to say yes with Wheaties. I certainly felt confident that the story is strong enough that these people want to be affiliated with it, which is a nice way to start making your first film as a director, where at least these people think that you might be making something good. So yeah.
That's all. Well, I mean, it's your cast. Going back to the cast and Tony Hale, I mean, you really put together a movie that you could sell to General Mills and you could sell to Banks. I don't know if is she? Well, I don't know if I should ask if she's in the movie or not.
I think that's when you watch the trailer. I think that's a question that I think is worth asking. I'm not going to give an answer to it.
Good.
I don't think it's actually not important anyways, because I think that the stories about this guy who went to college with somebody famous, and that's something that I think that the more people that I pitched the idea to, and we were, I was thinking of making the movie, it's interesting how many people went to school with somebody that's famous. And it's funny that the tag of the trailer is that Sharon Stone story, which is from the book, and that's the version I think that that everyone else has in their life. It's like, I played ice hockey with Mario Lemieux.
Sure.
I'm not, not in touch with him anymore. And I think the idea of whether Elizabeth is going to pop up in the movie, and I hope people don't go into this thinking, oh, is she going to be in the third act of this movie? Because I think the whole fun of it is it's more this idea of, well, do you believe this guy who's kind of trying to convince you that he did, and more importantly, what does that mean to people? That sort of brush of celebrity in a way as an anecdote that people tell as at a party or at a bar or with their friends. That's the kind of thing that it's either coming from a place of insecurity or it's coming out of a place of trying to impress somebody else. And I think that's what's cool about what this movie is trying to say is that it doesn't matter if he knows Elizabeth Banks. Sure. It's the idea of what is it that he's trying to do with this story, and what is it that he's how is he trying to connect with people, and I think that part of the story is where I hope that people find that's where I hope that that's what they're hoping for, is this guy to connect again with people.
So, did you have to get her story right? She went to Penn, like you said, so you found an actress that went to Penn. That was important. But any other aspect that Tony Hale's character talks about, did you have to go to Elizabeth Banks and say, would this make sense if I said this about you?
There's a fictional. I think there's a fictional version of Elizabeth Banks in this film.
Okay,
but at the same time, it was all done in ways that I think, like in real life, Elizabeth Banks met her husband in college, really right when she started college. And I'd imagine that a big chunk of her college experience is marked by her relationship with her husband. I didn't want to talk about the real Elizabeth Banks. I think the version of Elizabeth Banks in the film and how she relates to Sid's story, it's done in a way I think that's fun and it connects to the book. The book had a strong through line too of this relationship with the celebrity. And it's the fun of it is it's a one-sided relationship. It's Sid's version of their relationship. Sure. We did obviously send her everything that we were doing. She saw the script and she didn't have any problems with it in a way that I think, I obviously was sensitive to the fact that I'm not going to say something that's defamatory or, insulting to her in the script, because obviously she's not going to say yes. But yeah, the having her say yes to what was there was important to me, obviously.
I think a good example of this whole thing is Matt LeBlanc in Episodes. It's not Matt LeBlanc. He's playing himself, but it's a whole different character.
Yeah. And that show was a great sort of example of that. I think the thing that I hope people don't turn this into is like My Date with Drew. I don't know if you saw that, but
I loved that movie. I don't know if I believed that movie, but I loved that movie.
Well, exactly, and I think that in that movie, I think you would feel let down at some level if she doesn't show up at the end, right? I mean.
Almost she had to just to keep her thing going.
Yeah.
Hey Scott, thank you so much. Love talking to you. This movie looks amazing. Eat Wheaties. The cast is great. Tony Hale is in the lead. And it's about time we've seen Tony Hale in the lead. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Good luck. Where will we see it? It's April 30th. Will it be streaming?
It's going to be going out theatrically and on video on demand on the same day on April 30th. So it'll be on iTunes and Amazon and wherever else you get your VOD movies at the same time. And then and it's going to theaters as well. So it's Los Angeles hasn't quite opened up theaters fully yet, but it sounds like we're getting closer. So
yeah, we have a few here. I actually went to the movie theaters for the first time in a year and 4 or 5 months to see Long Weekend, Steve Bastiglione's movie.
Oh yeah, I saw that you did an interview with him. Yeah,
Had him
great.
on.
I can't wait to see it. So that was it a good experience walking into the theater?
I was telling Eric this earlier, Eric Davis from Fandango. I don't know if you've run into him yet. It was like being in a zombie movie, hiding from the zombies in the movie theater. It was run down. There was nobody there. One of the letters on AMC was broken out front. So it was a totally surreal experience being somebody who used to go to the movies like once a week at one point. It was odd. I don't know. I think it's going to take some time to get back into the movie going experience, but it was nice to get back there.
Yeah, I think you're right. We'll get there eventually. The big chains out here, Pacific theaters are not reopening, which is a huge blow. That's where between the ArcLight theaters, which they owned, and there was one near my house, which I would go to often. It's sad, but I think we'll get there eventually. Look, the beauty about this film is that I think it'll work at home as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of thing that, to be honest, when you're going through the long days that we're all going through now, it's kind of nice to turn something on that'll make you laugh.
Well, I get home at like 10 a.m., 11 a.m. on Fridays. On April 30th, that's a Friday, right? Yeah. Actually, April 30th, I'm getting my second shot.
Nice.
So I will be bedridden, I'm sure, because everyone gets sick from the second shot, and I will be able to put on Amazon Prime and watch Eat Wheaties. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you like it, and stay in touch.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The movie looks fantastic. I mean, honestly, everybody in this movie is amazing, and I cannot wait to see it.